Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds was an Xbox Live Arcade beat-em-up that was originally released in 2013. Since then, it has been re-released on a variety of platforms, the latest of which being the Nintendo Switch, now as Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive. It features additional content like new playable characters, but unfortunately the removal of online multiplayer. At first glance, it's easy to think that this game looks chaotic and shallow. It seems like a button masher where you would grind your way through hordes of inconsequential fodder. And I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. I know that I did looking at the store page. In fact, I wasn't planning on covering this game at all until I had received a review copy, and I'm very glad that I did. What blew me away was the surprising amount of complexity hidden below the surface of this stylish beat-em-up. I was completely unaware coming into this game that Phantom Breaker is a long-running franchise, much less a traditional one-on-one fighting game. If anything, I thought this might be a licensed game based off of an anime or something. I mean, it certainly looks the part.
さあ、どうかしらね。
Instead, it turns out that Battlegrounds is an offshoot of the Phantom Breaker series, which takes the characters and the universe and remixes it into a sort of chibi beat-em-up game, but not without bringing some of that complex fighting game DNA with it. These mechanics really shine when you get into a one-on-one boss battle, but they aren't entirely lost even when you're taking on an entire screen full of enemies. It's fairly easy on normal difficulty, but inevitably you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're just getting wrecked by a new enemy or continuously attacked and you can't seem to break out of it. To me, this is where the game really started to show its hidden depth. You have 3 different types of attacks: light, medium, and heavy. Each does the amount of damage that you would expect, but they take various amounts of time to pull off. For example, if you continuously try to throw a hard punch at an enemy who hits you faster than you can make contact, you'll maybe get a shot or two in, but it's going to be a losing battle. Conversely, if you're fighting a tougher enemy, a lighter punch will certainly hit them, but it will fail to make them flinch, opening yourself up to attacks. The key is to mix these abilities until you can get a cluster of enemies into a sort of stun lock. Once you've achieved this, you want to keep attacking them and get that combo going as long as possible until they finally go down, leaving behind a geyser of jewels and coins that count as experience that you can later invest into your character. Speaking of that, let's talk about progression. As you defeat the enemies, they'll drop money and jewels that you must collect before they blink out of existence. This brings a whole other layer of strategy into the fold. I found myself playing the game much differently on my second pass, being much more conscious of the position of enemies before I would finish them off. A higher combo means more payout, and that payout means nothing if you're not in a position to collect it all. This is a really satisfying mechanic to wrangle once you're laying out hordes of enemies. The leveling system has 2 tiers, one which unlocks useful moves and abilities, like being able to attack from a sprint, adding extra jumps, or continuing combos with heavier attacks. And the other tier, which focuses strictly on improving stats, such as attack or defense or speed. The cool thing about Phantom Break is that none of these upgrades are set in stone. Meaning, if you put all your points into attack and a boss rips you apart because you just can't move fast enough, it's no big deal. Once you die, hit continue and the leveling screen will show up again and you can easily tinker with where you've invested your points. This is such a great design choice. It lets you experiment as much as you need to and really figure out what upgrades support your playstyle best. It's another subtle way that the game makes each character your own. Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive isn't a very long game, but it's meant to be replayed a lot in order to level up the huge cast of characters. As I mentioned earlier, the Nintendo Switch version does not have online multiplayer, but this is the kind of game that begs to be played on a couch with 3 other friends. And if you've got 2 pairs of Joy-Cons, you're all set for a really good time. The only issue that I did have with local multiplayer is that in order to level up your characters, you do need to quit out to the main menu and have player 1 do it for everybody. It is a big hassle, and it totally kills the game flow that I enjoyed so much in single player. Arcade mode works as a sort of single player only gauntlet through the main campaign, but only with 1 continue and a timer if you're into speedrunning. There is of course an online leaderboard so you can see where you rank against the rest of the world and your friends. It's cool that it's here, but leaderboards generally aren't my thing. After I beat the game for the first time, I immediately jumped back in to see how early levels felt now that my character was so beefed up, and the difference was night and day. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't entirely because of their improved stats. It was also different because I had gotten better at the game. You can see how now I was much more conscious about keeping enemies grouped together and building up longer combos, and made sure that I was in a position to collect every bit of experience that came out of them. And I realized that the game is incredibly satisfying when you start to take these more advanced strategies into account. The beat 'em up genre is full of games that generally are so simple that they only have one attack button. To see a more complex take on it is not only refreshing, but it feels like an excellent way to push the genre forward in a meaningful way. Granted, this game is technically over 4 years old, but still, I hadn't heard of it, and if I can get other people to give it a shot, then my job here is done. Aside from the clunky leveling up when you're playing with friends and the omission of online multiplayer, this game has so much going for it. There are a ton of characters to play as, each of them have their own unique weapons and attacks, boss fights are intense and satisfying, running through the campaign in couch co-op is a great time, and a game like this fits right at home on a handheld. But yeah, if you're a fan of these kinds of games, you owe it to yourself to check it out. I couldn't recommend it enough. I'm giving Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive a 4 out of 5.